Well, I have a few different things that I do to express myself, but right now the biggest one is definitely writing. And I'm working on a short story book, but I've always kept journals. I have journals from when I was like 6 years old, just like a whole stack of them. And so I really feel like they're the archives of my life. And I recently, maybe like a few years ago, was like, I should do something with this. Like I should really try to stop just talking about myself in my writing and instead really try to create worlds, and not like fantasy or anything, but just kind of take what I'm doing already and make it into fiction. So that's what I'm working on now.
What's it about? What's the
it's
the
good.
plot?
That is, yeah, that's
It makes me cry every time I read her writings.
It's a long question, but so thanks, Giulia.
It is. It's true.
So it's basically, the way I'd say it would be sort of about the mother archetype and how we're either like running away from it or running towards it. As well as how the masculine comes into play. So just these different stories around that could be, right now, a lot of them are more, I'd say, negative, or dark, but there's going to be a lot of growth on the other end as well. So it's going to kind of follow that trajectory. Like it's going to start in one place and end in another place. So it's kind of, they're all going to intertwine somehow. So that's
Cool.
Yeah.
What inspired you to just write about that?
I was noticing that in a lot of my own journal writing, that was kind of being reflected. So I think that's the biggest thing. It was just natural. So yeah, I've never talked about it before. So
Never?
no, not like in that way, in, trying to
Public setting.
Yeah, in a public setting, and really just having almost like a pitch for it to be like, this is what it's about,
Mm-hmm.
So,
That's exciting.
that's it, I would say.
Mm-hmm. And like, what makes you, like, what feels good about writing to you? Like, what makes it your passion?
I just have to. Like, I think I would die or explode if I didn't. Like, it's so cathartic to do. And it also just helps me make sense of the world. I'm really sensitive. I'm friends with a lot of really sensitive people. And I think if we don't have some sort of outlet for that, we get totally crushed under the weight of it. So I just have to. And I always feel better after I do, after I have like a really, like big journal entry where I feel like I can really say or articulate what I'm saying or what I'm feeling. I feel so much better. It's like, it makes it tangible instead of just spinning in your own head. It makes it real, and then you can deal with it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how I see it. And I think that's true for anybody that journals. I think there's so much like good stuff in there just out of your own experience that you can turn into something different with different characters and different settings, but the same like jewel thing that you went through. And you can use symbolism, and it's so fun. It's so fun. It's creating a world. And it can be really hard to, what I'm currently working on is really difficult to write, but it's saying something about a dynamic between male and female that needs to be said. There's a lot of feminism right now, which is lovely, but we're also we're demonizing men. And so this is just shedding light on how demonizing men is not true. And it's actually going in the opposite direction and making everything worse. That's where the current thing I'm working on. And it's not fun to write. I think it's a bit controversial as well. I don't know that people will like that point of view, but it just feels like the right thing to say. It's been definitely a big topic on my mind. So. Yeah.
Very cool. And Giulia, why does it move you so much when you read it? read her work?
Why does it move me so much? Because she's a poet, she's an artist, and she, first of all, like, we are so similar, astrological twins, right? But the way that she writes, it feels like it's coming from me, but I can imagine that I'm not the only one that would feel that way. Her way of expressing herself is so deep and so poetic and so original. Like, it's very, very original. And it's just, she just has phenomenal talent that really hits every time. I mean, I've read a couple things that just immediately I'd be at work, I'd be like, I gotta go to the toilet for a sec. Even if it's not like something that's actively happening in my life, it just, she goes right in there, and it's exactly this thing. It's this world, it's this bubble that you're immediately in, and you feel the emotion through her poetics, for sure.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
that's amazing.
That's what I hope for. I really hope for people to connect with it, even if you don't directly relate to the character. There's still something in there that you can feel connected to. And there was something else I wanted to say, but I don't remember. We'll leave it at that.
How would you describe Giulia's writing?
Well, so
she has read my screenplay.
I have read her screenplay, which is brilliant. The part to me that is something that I struggle with a lot that she just has down is the dialogue. And the dialogue is just so real, without being like corny or anything or cheesy. And I feel that I could just visualize her story so well, even though I was just reading a screenplay. And I went to film school and I've written screenplays, and it's really, really hard because you're making a visual without adding detail. Like, it's kind of a really weird art form, and it never really worked for me. It never stuck for me. I'm way better at, or way more comfortable at least with short story format and having all that detail. But she did such a fantastic job of just like great dialogue, great characters with just essentially the skeleton, because that's what the script is. So yeah, I'm hoping for big things for that screenplay. I really enjoyed it. I loved it. It's so fun. And the other thing, it was, I guess it's not necessarily an adult or a children's film.
No, I don't know. People have compared it to Avatar: The Last Airbender, but the TV show. So there is a tone of coming of age, even though it's not an 18-year-old coming of age, more of a 28-year-old coming of age. But yeah, it's like a comedy drama. So there's like wit and quick back and forths. But it is a coming of age story, you know?
Yeah, it really felt like it could be for anyone. Like a family film, and young kids can see it as that sort of hero's journey of like going off to like figure this out and find this out. And then eventually you just come back to the same place, but you're different. And it's just a beautiful way to tell that story, I think. And it'll be really fun as a visual too.
Mm-hmm. And Giulia, why is writing for you so like your passion?
I had a really interesting childhood where I was moved around a lot, and it was kind of isolating in that sense. And therefore, again, you want to create these worlds. And for me, the writing was always tied in with acting. So I performed these stories that I, wrote and imagined, and saw all the different characters, and would do the props and the casting and the directing and all of it. And I just loved the whole thing of creating worlds and telling these stories, whether it was comedy or, philosophical or whatever. And so since then, having mostly been on a path of acting, always wanted to be an actress, and having been an actress and still am an actress, it's always like I knew the stories I wanted to tell. Not to say I can't adopt, especially if it's someone else's genius material, that I can't absorb that for sure. But to be able to really craft from beginning to end, to then embody it and then become the story, I think was really powerful for me. And so I always leaned towards writing, directing it myself, and then acting as well. And yeah, it's super cathartic. I think as I am maturing in my process now and about to write my second screenplay, I think the first things you write, especially your first big project, whether it's a book of short stories or my first screenplay, I think it tends to be very autobiographical, which I think is beautiful and I think is a really natural process. And in a way, I'm sure every piece of art will be that comes out of you. But I also feel like, okay, it's almost like I had to get that out of my system. And now there's suddenly a lot more freedom. So I think, yeah, it's a natural extension of self-expression of what's going on within. I think that will always be in there. Like my screenplay set mostly in India. That's based on partly my own experiences, partly figments of imagination and, other inspirations. But yeah, I think it's a mixture of that. It's a mixture of almost alchemizing what's inside of you, whether it's pain, it's beauty, it's whatever it is, and drawing beauty from the pain and putting that on the paper, putting that in a tangible form. And then also playing. So adding, characters, mixing them and yeah.
Yeah. When you guys are catharting, do you have an idea? Do you have an idea of how you want people to perceive what you write? Like, does that hold you back or anything? Or does that not even influence what you write about?
I would say I actually try to do the very opposite of that with everything that I write. At least right now, because I think there's like an ego game that comes in. I feel like if I try to imagine someone reading it, so I try to just stay as like heart-centered and just like, what is the story that I want to tell? Like what do I need to say? And that way it comes from a genuine, I will say, it is almost like channeling in a way because you're just totally lost in the process. And I think eventually, like, you kind of have to think about, okay, well, what would like my audience think? Who's going to read this? But I try really hard, at least for the first draft or two, to not really imagine anyone else reading it, just more stream of consciousness, and then kind of just trying to piece everything together so it sounds like normal. Yeah.
I would say when I'm not journaling for myself, and when I'm actually trying to create or creating, I have a very specific way of doing that, a very specific ritual that I've developed organically over the past few years, especially with this one specific project, which is this first screenplay. And it starts with an intention setting, or some would call it an invocation, to really set the space. It always has cacao. There's always cacao involved, which, kind of powers that intention setting. I work with specific like binaural beats or something that will keep me, get me into that brain state that I want to be in. And any disruption needs to go. And then so for 5 hours, when I do that ritual and I'm in that, I don't think about anything, because I open myself up to inspiration, to the muses, to the characters, to the story that wants to come through, which I don't feel like I can take any credit for. And then I allow that to come through me. So at no point am I in the I think when you switch from writing, especially for me, to a directing point of view or a producing point of view, that I suddenly have to take a different position in it. But when I'm actually in a really powerful creative process, there's not a single thought. And usually it's like I awaken and I'm like starving, and like I suddenly have to, realize I held in my pee for like 3 hours and like completely unaware. Yeah, I would say that. And then in terms of catharsis, and maybe it's being so sensitive, so empathic, but also being an actress for so long. It's like when I'm writing it, the emotion it's almost like I have to act it out. I have to improvise it. I have to live it. I have to live it in order for me to actually write it correctly, because I have to feel what would be said by which character. And I think eventually each character starts speaking for themselves as well. So you just hear it's like I hear them in a room and then it goes on the page. So yeah. That's my cathartic moment. I have to live it, but it can be really fun too. It doesn't have to be super emotional. It can be really funny.
Where do you find your inspiration from for writing?
It's just like my own life. I just try to, I'm really observant. So even like, I wrote my thesis, a short film. Well, I wrote a script in this instance for a short film, and the entire idea just came from like the wallpaper at the Barnes and Noble bathroom. I was sitting with that wallpaper that just creeped me out, and I was like, I don't know how it happened, but it was like I just saw that and almost was having like downloads of like what the story was going to be. So it can be anything at any moment, and you just have to be aware. You just have to constantly be present and aware in your life, and it will come.
Mm-hmm. Really fun. It's really fun. Yeah.
I would say, definitely some personal experiences, but that's a very organic trickling. It's not like, I want to write about this one specific experience I had, or a character I might be, and I do this as an actress too, stealing a habit from this person, a tick from this person, or a trait from this person. And it just becomes this melting pot. Whereas this is organic inspiration. I see someone walking a certain way or something and I store it because I'm like, this is brilliant, like this would be great. But yeah, I would say the same thing, downloads. Like I'm about to start writing my second screenplay, which has kind of been ruminating in my consciousness for like a year and a half, and it hasn't felt correct yet. But I can see the inciting incident, like I know what is going to catalyze. Okay, suddenly I see this character is pregnant, or I see it has to be in this country, because mine tend to be quite worldwide. And like, it's not, not down the road, but like one's in India, this one's probably going to be in Bolivia. So I see, and then certain themes, intergenerational trauma is mostly this one. And then seeing the different storylines and seeing ancestors, characters, and all my stories are pretty much all my stories. I don't want to limit myself now, but are magical realists. So there's always that magical element, which really opens up the toy box of play, So yeah, it can come from anywhere, but usually it's almost direction, but it comes, I don't try to force it. And suddenly I know, okay, now I need to put pen to paper and start writing.
Yeah, that's funny about how it just like comes, because it's as direction, because I've felt that too. Like, I don't really want to write this. Like, this is going to be hard to write. Like, this is going to be sad. This is going to be this. But it's almost like you don't have a choice, because you can't stop thinking about it. It just kind of sticks. And when it sticks, that's like kind of how I know that, okay, this is it. I'm going to run with this. And then you kind of set up an outline, but you just leave it to whomever to direct it and move it forward.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then what are your favorite like writers of books that you really enjoy?
Books. Oh my gosh. I love Stephen King. He's probably the most popular one that I really love, because actually, similar to what you were saying about your own writing, Giulia, that it's taking place in real life, but then there's just kind of this edge to it that brings it into the more magical. And that's what I love about his writing, is that it's so regular, 3D, real world.
But heightened almost, right?
Yeah, and then you just end up in this mystical place, and you're like, how did we get here? But you're believing it because it set you up in a place that you're familiar with, so that once you go into that magical realism, you're like totally in it. You're totally buying it, because you're like, well, we were in 3D, so now we're over here. And it just makes it more realistic. So I'd say he's probably my favorite as a whole. And his work is just really touching. It's not just horror. Like, it's not like It is a really good example, because, it's creepy clown. We've all seen the movie and like everything. But actually, you look at the book and it's like thousands of pages. And the reason is because he actually really goes into the relationships that the characters have, and it's deep, and it's a lot of information. So you're seeing these people as real people. So it's no longer just like, oh, there's this creepy clown like terrorizing all these kids. It's like, no, but these are real people. This is a real world. This is real stuff. And then you connect with it, and it's so awesome. He's the best.
What's your favorite book of his?
Probably Rose Matter. And that's a really good example of just this magical realism kind of thing. It's about a woman who is in a really abusive relationship, and she goes to a thrift store one day. First of all, she runs away. She runs away from this guy. And that's like the first scene. And you're like, holy crap, like what's going to happen? Like it's just so beautiful. And the way that it starts is she sees a speck of blood on the floor. That's like the opening. And she's like, I've got to get out of here. And she's in some random thrift store somewhere, and she sees a painting, and she enters the painting.
Oh, I love that.
And it just, I'll say no more because that would be enough for me to read anything if I heard that. So I'll say no more, but it is just really beautiful.
Super cool. Mm-hmm. What's your favorite book, Giulia?
My favorite what?
Book or like
book? Yeah. I have a few. So I'm a big fan of like Russian literature. I love Dostoevsky. I think that's how I taught myself English. I had, even though Dostoevsky's in Russian, but it was an English translation. It was Crime and Punishment at 14 years old. I read that, had my dictionary, and was really trying to teach myself English and was just lost in this story. So I'm a big fan of a lot of Russian literature, but including The Master and Margarita. Fantastic novel, magical realist. They did a phenomenal play on it as well, immersive play for like 4 hours. It's amazing. But I would say besides that, anything by Gabriel Garcia Marquez. I love just 100 Years of Solitude.
That's beautiful.
It's a classic. Yeah, it's phenomenal. And then I would say Isabel Allende as well. She has The House of the Spirits and has that really feminine touch to it. So yeah, I would say that. And again, it's just that all these stories are magical realism because there's that essence of spirituality, but it's also really fun and playful and grounded at the same time. And it just encompasses all these different themes of humanity. It becomes this epic. And I think that's what I am inspired by and kind of strive for, where there's this, this mixture of complete wacky playfulness and bizarre beauty. And then, just this deep emotion at the same time, and the profoundness of, what we're all living here, this hologram.
And then how did you two finally get to know each other and all that?
Well, we are astrological twins. I feel that some listeners may find that interesting.
It was on set. You were doing camera work, I think.
Yeah, which I never do. It was just somebody was away for the day, and I did some camera work on set, and she was there as the producer. And
so we just started chatting, and then I think I said I'm gonna be 29 soon. This was over a year ago, and you were like, "Oh, me too." I was like, "What day? What day?" And we were like, "Wait, what?"
Yeah, and then of course it's what time?
Yes, and where were? Yeah. And then we realized I was like, I need to look at your chart right now, and it was like all our planets same, pretty much. Not exactly, because no one is, not even actual twins are the same like that. But and then I became obsessed because I was like, she's my twin sister. I need her in my life. And then I think we started going through, pretty rocky times in A Saturn return. And I think that really, really bonded us, because not only are we going through similar cycles, like I think of astrology as like the science of time. We're going through similar cycles, but also like we have a similar makeup. So we're responding in a different way. And even though our lives are really quite different, there's a lot of similarities, a lot of themes. And so there's a real sense of like, when I'm with her, I don't have to explain myself at all. Like, it's just, it's not like we can finish my sentence, but it's almost like I try to explain like an inner process I have or an internal conflict, and she's already there because she gets it, because she's wired the same way. So it makes it for a really comfortable and almost validating type of friendship, and really fun, because we have similar tastes, values.
And then of course found out we were both writers, so
which didn't surprise me.
And then not surprising, but also just a really grateful to have that fellow writer who can read your work and be honest and all that too.
And then when did you guys meet? Like a year ago when you started?
Yeah,
Giulia?
like a year and a couple months ago. Yeah, when I started. But actually, no, we met on the phone. Do you remember? We met on the phone.
This is really funny.
I was at the playground. Don't ask me.
Oh, I don't remember.
I was at the playground and I was talking to someone, and I said, I'm about to start at Gaia next week. It's like, oh, I know someone at Gaia. My old bandmate was at Gaia, and we just had this mutual connection. And so we ended up being on the phone to each other. Oh, this is Madeline. She also works at Gaia, and she was kind of standoffish, and I don't blame her, like some random person. And I was like,
it was the guy I was dating at the time, and like, I don't know, we were just in the middle of something, and he's like, hey, you want to talk to somebody that's about to work at Gaia? I was like, what? No.
Why would I?
You know what I mean? And so I was like, hi.
Yeah.
It's Giulia.
And so then we didn't even click until later when we met again. They were like, oh, wait, we spoke on the phone. It was random. Yeah, me too.
Like, wait, who gave you the phone?
So my boyfriend
Okay.
at the time was a bandmate with
this random person I met at the playground.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
And that's how.
Yeah.
And I guess he called him.
He's excited to
yeah, he's like, oh, this girl at the park's going to be a Gaia soon.
Yeah.
She's like, okay.
That's a funny little message or something.
Yeah, I don't know. It was funny. Yeah.
And I was going to say that since you guys love writing, how are you like doing that along with what else you have going on?
Yeah, I mean, I hesitate to say that too because there's such a flow with it that like I'll just be like walking down the street and like have all these ideas suddenly. So I do think that having a scheduled time for it is important and definitely something that I need to be a little bit more strict with myself about. But as it stands right now and the way that I've been writing is just when it comes, just when it comes, and then there's less pressure and there's more flow. But I know that that's not realistic for really like, I'm in the very early stages of things, kind of like just getting all the outlines, all the ideas, how all these things going to connect. But it is like once it's like, okay, like I need to actually like pull this through, having that scheduled time, I think. And I'm a morning person for that. Like I feel that I wake up from the dream realm and then all the information is in my head. So it's definitely a morning time thing for me. So that's probably when I schedule it when I do that. But everybody's different. My brother, he's super creative at night. So he does all his painting at night. I'm the opposite. So figure that out.
I would say for me, honestly, just insane fucking discipline because so what happened is like I have 2 kids, right? So when I became a mother, prior to that, I had time and space. And so I indulged my creativity. I indulged my doubts. I indulged my fears. I indulged my perfectionism, totally unaware of that, at the time, because there was no push, right? It was just, and maybe that was it was my early 20s as well. So maybe that was, what was supposed to be, probably. But once I had no time at all, and I'm really like, I don't think anyone gets it unless you have kids. Like it's just so all consuming that I felt like a part of, like, I just had to. And I remember having my oldest son now as a baby, like tied to my back in a backpack. And I was bouncing on a ball, humming, like oming to him while I was writing on my laptop. Like I had to, as soon as he was asleep, I ran. And so to write or to work on whatever creative project. I had a nonprofit as well that I was starting at the time. And so, especially like in the past year and a half since I've been at Gaia, that's a 40-hour job, if not more sometimes. Then I'm acting on the side. Then I have my 2 kids and it's just, you're squashed. However, I feel like, and maybe this is how I'm wired, I feel like the more I do, the more I can do, without underestimating the importance of the feminine principle, right? Of magnetism, of receptivity, of rest, of play, of self-care, that's all extremely important. So everything in balance. But I have found that the more I output, the more I output. And it's good stuff, I mean, sometimes it sucks, but like mostly it's like a creative momentum. And you just keep on going. And I found that with the time restraint as well, when I have the 2-hour time slot to sit down and do something, again, now I have my ritual developed and stuff, but I cannot indulge. Well, how am I? You just, keep doing that. You just shut it out and then you open the gates for me. The muses come in and I just go. And it just comes out. And I found that it's not only have I become more productive with much less time, I've also just become much more creative, much more innovative. And, but I will say it's the momentum of the project itself. Now I'm in the baby steps of the second and I almost don't want to start because I know it's going to consume me. And, this screenplay took me 3 years to write with different drafts. And eventually I had a mentor that came in that was like, chop, I don't care about your 40-hour job. Like, so I'm out there till 11 p.m. My kids are asleep. I wake up at 5. And it was hard for like 6 months when I was doing that draft with him. I was just, tired, but very inspired. So yeah, I think it's like a gift almost to lose that sense of time and space for yourself.
Totally. Because whenever I write or when I write my scripts or ideas, they always come from dreams. Because whenever I wake up, I'm like, I remember a dream and then I write it all down. But the dream sometimes is like a week or like a year. Some have multiple lengths. And then I've had things that feel so real that I was like, that wasn't a dream. It was like something else. Like, but then I always take it as inspiration for like my writing or visuals or being creative. So I love getting my inspiration from that. And I don't know how I do it. It just like happens. But I know when it does happen at night, I'm just like in a creative place and not really thinking, just more like lost in my, like the feeling of the theme or something like that.
Are you writing anything right now? Are you working on it?
Yeah. I mean, seriously, I'm like always writing scripts for these, like a 3 to 5 series of films that I've always had in mind to do. And they're all like, they come from my dreams. So like it's stuff I've never seen in a movie.
Right.
So it takes me time to like write down all the details and the visuals. But the main theme that I've always wanted ever since I was little, I was like, I saw a movie and I was like, oh, there's like a lot of potential in this, and not knowing what that meant, but I felt it. And then I had a dream where like either felt it or heard it, but the idea is like, what if you make a film and after anyone sees it, they could meet their soulmate, just as a concept. So ever since I was little, I'd watch movies and try to see what I could pull from to be like, oh, I felt something great from that. How'd they do that? Or like do this. And then that has translated into me, my whole life revolving around that quest, I guess. How do you do that? So a lot of it has been like attracting, teachers that no one's ever heard of. That makes me feel very like, am I just imagining things? People visit me in dreams, tell me things. And then when I meditate, I like see the movie. And sometimes it's so like moving that I'm like, this is the timeline. Like
when I do your meditation, I see my projects too. You're very good at evoking the imagery and the story of, I think of your soul, but also of the creative projects that are reflections of your soul, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, you craft those really well.
Yeah. I just love thinking concepts that are like, seem impossible, but like nothing is. So I'm kind of like, what if I could do that? And what does that mean? So it's like, I'm playing a long game, I feel like, rather than making things constantly. Yeah. Because I have a really big vision. And then I've also had visions of certain things that will happen when I do that. So it's also very like, is that also real, or am I, but the energy I feel from it, because what I learn and guide and teach with meditations is that you can go to another place and bring something back to use.
Yes.
And that's what I use the meditation for, like manifesting or creating. So I've learned that's the most powerful thing to use meditation for, besides like healing your own mind and everything like that. But, I love using meditation for that, because then it's like, it just comes to me and I feel it rather than, like forcing it,
intellectualizing,
or just being like, I have to write.
Right.
A part of me, it's just like, it just comes and I can't stop.
Yeah.
Then it just happens,
Do you get specific, because you're reminding me now, do you get specific guides or, like a specific, I don't even know how to call it, like a specific, I guess a guide during that process through meditation, or is it a specific, I don't know. Like
I definitely feel when I set an intention out like that, the universe is like, well, you have to experience what it's like to not express your soul, or like the opposite of finding a soulmate. Cause then it's like, how would I know? Cause I feel like I have to experience it. Well, I also know when you set an intention, the universe shows you everything that's not that. So then you find it, so it's like, if you want anything really great in your life, you have to experience a little bit of the pain where you don't have that. So then the pain like projects you toward that.
Yes.
So like a part of you was like, I had to kind of lose a lot of ideas of what my relationship was. Cause everyone kind of thinks every relationship is a soulmate. Even if it goes wrong, it's like, I think it still is. So part of my story felt like I had to lose something like that to then know how you get it again. It's kind of like the whole concept of this school or earth, it's like, how do you know what abundance, joy is, or if you don't experience the opposite. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I love playing with the concept of like, so I have that idea of like, what if someone wants to find their soulmate? So then I take that, and just to amuse myself and get me creative, I'm like, what would the script be where it's like, no one has a soulmate? And then I'm like, this is brilliant. Like I just go off, and then I find the little paths that like, where I feel the opposite of it. Because of the contrast, it pushes me there, if that makes sense. So like whenever I also help, like, whenever there's something you want, think of like, oh, what would it be if I didn't have it? And just go like all the way. Because then when you really focus on it, you really know that like, that's where I need to be, the feeling of it, I guess, you know? Yeah. And plus it's really amusing.